Hello everybody, John Felt here. Welcome to the weekly water outlook for November 8th, 2015. One of the things I've been really focused on, you probably noticed it from some of my blog issuances from last week, is are we getting into that El Nino pattern? And I don't think it's conclusive, but there are some signs. Now, one of the things we'd want to look for are sort of an emerging dryness over sort of parts of the Midwest, some warmer temperatures over the upper tier of the U.S., and then some wet weather over the south central U.S. and then parts of the southeast U.S. So this is the number of days of rain in the last 30 days. And you can sort of see in this area here, parts of the southwest U.S., there are some signs of an El Nino type pattern, including the southeast U.S. On the other hand, I haven't seen that real persistent dry area over the Midwest, but there are some areas right in here, a little bit further west than would be expected, but a little bit of imagination, you can see that, and definitely the upper Midwest has been on the warm side. So I'm beginning to see some signs of that El Nino cold season pattern, but I wouldn't expect it to be really clear for a number of months into the core of winter. Now here's precipitation over the last week. The two areas that really got clobbered were the south central U.S., from eastern Texas across Louisiana, parts of Mississippi, and then across parts of Alabama, North Georgia, and parts of the Carolinas. If you look at a widespread precipitation, and that's important to look at, not just the point values, but you can look at a very widespread 2 inches or more over the south central and southeast U.S. And that's that area in yellow. So sometimes we get carried away with, perhaps just the point values or a little pinpoint of red. But if I look at the area of the U.S. that was covered by 2 inches last week, and then looking a little bit further, the area that was covered by 5 inches, that's the area in red, and even a little bit further, the 10 inches, that was a very, very widespread soaking rain or extreme rain in areas. The other area that was very active was the Pacific Northwest, both with rain and snow. Now, everywhere else was fairly quiet, light amounts of rain, nothing all that impressive. But again, this core area right in here, we're looking at 3 to 4 times the percent of rainfall for the week. And then some pockets here and there, but I still see over the Midwest and other areas in the northeast U.S. Areas in yellow, and that's indicating below normal precipitation. Now, as far as snow goes, I mentioned last week the Intermountain region, and you can see quite a bit of snow in the western U.S., including some heavy snow here and there. Also, some of the early season snow in the upper Midwest, very much scattered over parts of North Dakota and Minnesota. If you want to see what's still on the ground, here we go. It's definitely where you would expect it in the mountains, but there's a little bit of snow now in northern Minnesota. This is probably melted by now, but a couple little patches over the upper Midwest. I'll be looking at that from now on, probably week to week as we're starting to get into the cold season. Now, the areas where stream flow is running high from last week's rain, 2 weeks ago, I should say, and this week includes eastern Texas and then across parts of the southeast U.S., the coastal regions still draining into the Carolinas here, very high flows. And then this week's rainfall also produced some very significant flows, increase in flows over northern Georgia as well, some of the smaller tributaries. Okay, now if we look at rivers as far as drought, there's been a very significant improvement in river flows over the south central U.S. Look at Texas. Wasn't that all long that we were looking at severe hydrologic drought and even a few spots extreme? That is all gone. The entire southeast U.S., except for a few very scattered areas, have now really improved stream flow. So in many cases, the issue is above normal stream flow and not below normal. But there are some areas around the country that we're still looking at very low stream flow, the western third of the nation in general, and then a pocket over the very central part of the U.S. Centered over Kansas. But again, very significant improvement over the south central U.S. over the last 30 days. Now, there is a system in the tropics let's keep an eye on. Just last week, I showed a graph that showed how quickly things have gone down. This system here is not named, but it does have winds at 30 knots with gusts to 40. And it is, just this last picture here, beginning to be a decent looking system, a little bit more organized, very compact. But models are very consistent now. Look how close all these model runs are. These are hurricane models and global models, and they're showing it pretty conclusively moving northwest, north, and then being picked up in the upper flow and being pulled off into the northeast U.S. So I think we need to keep an eye on it, especially in the Bahamas. Some very unsettled weather this week, and wouldn't be surprised if it would get up to be where it'd be a named storm. But overall, it looks like it's going to remain well offshore. Now, the Arctic Oscillation this week, let's talk about that. Last week, you can see it was in the positive territory up in here. And as we go through the forecast period, you can see as we get towards late November, it sort of stays close to neutral. And if I wanted to show you one image, and I really don't want to mislead you saying the Arctic Oscillation can't explain everything, but it is telling the story that things are settling down. This milder weather over a large part of the nation is going to be gradually getting back to normal. Now, it's not dipping negative, so we're not looking at big pushes of cold air, but overall, the milder weather, the above normal temperatures are going to be settling back down. So the jet stream this week, we still see some pattern of the dip in the jet stream in the west, a little bit of a ridge or bulging of the jet stream north in the east, and that's going to result in temperatures mild in the area where it's bulging up to the north and a bit cool in the west. So that's going to be the story this week. But if you look at a lot of this area, this is actually fairly close to normal. So it's not going to be extreme, except perhaps in very small areas with this darker shade. For the most part, a little bit above normal or a little bit below normal. Now, I did want to show you the precipitation system that we're going to be looking at this week, and it's going to be over the southeast U.S. I know I've had a couple calls from friends of mine saying it's really been gloomy there. There have been a lot of rain days, a lot of clouds. We're going to have a low pressure system pushing in from the Gulf, pulling some tropical moisture inland, and this is early tomorrow on Monday, and you can see some of the moisture also being pulled in from the Atlantic is going to also enhance some convergence along the immediate coast. So we are going to have a fairly widespread rain event over the southeast U.S., primarily over the coastal Carolinas along the immediate coast. Now, before I talk about precipitation anymore, let's look a little bit further out at the jet stream. The 6th through the 11th, this is the day 1 through 5. Then we get into 6 to 10, we begin to see that moderation in temperatures. Southeast U.S. becomes a bit cooler. We see a bit warmer over the upper Midwest, but most of the U.S. near normal. Then finally, if we get into days 11 through 15, not much shading. That's that pattern close to normal. When we look at temperatures, we're looking at temperatures a little bit cooler than normal. That's just that first shade of blue, so I wouldn't get too excited about that. But overall, temperatures are moderating back as that Arctic Oscillation comes back into more of a neutral type pattern. Temperatures near normal over most of the U.S. So now let's focus on precipitation. Well, it looks like another very active week over the Pacific Northwest. There will be a front passing through the Midwest, some moderate rainfall in that area. But really, I think the story is going to be over the coastal Carolinas and parts of the southeast U.S. Keep an eye on the upper elevations, even some snow in that region, as well as some very heavy rainfall in parts of the highest elevation, some snow. And then we look at areas of very, very heavy rain along the immediate coast and a bit inland, not too far inland, but still pretty heavy rain in that area. So that's going to be the big story. Also, some soaking rains over parts of the northeast U.S. So we look at the anomaly of precipitation for the entire week, and I sort of like this image here for week 1, so I might try to use this because I think it clearly shows sort of the winners and losers, surpluses or deficits of rainfall. And you can see that area that's been really wet, Oklahoma, or I should say Arkansas, Louisiana, East Texas, going to be a reprieve this week. It's going to be much drier. But then we have this band with that Gulf of Mexico low over northwest Florida, southeast Alabama, South Georgia, and the eastern Carolinas this week. That's going to be an anomaly, a positive anomaly. Another positive anomaly, very small section in the Midwest, and then the Pacific Northwest. Snowfall, well, another introduction of as we get into the cool season, another introduction of a product I'll probably be showing each week. Here's the snowfall forecast for the next 7 days, for the most part confined to the upper reaches of the mountains in the western U.S. So precipitation, week 2. Let's take a look at this. And I wouldn't get too hung up on these weeks 2, 3, or 4 because the upper energy is going to be fairly subtle, and it's a little bit hard to say exactly where the rain is. So it's showing broad parts of the country near normal precipitation. Week 3, dry. This is, again, a hint. I think just a hint at El Nino. This is the area that would be dry. This is the area that would be wet. And week 3. So we are beginning to see the signs of a developing El Nino over Texas, perhaps part of Oklahoma, and some hint over the dryness over the eastern Corn Belt, parts of the Ohio River Valley. Now for days 3 through 7, here are your hazards. For the first 3 days, heavy rain over the southeast U.S. After that, it looks like it's going to quiet down with just heavy precipitation over the Pacific Northwest. So here are your takeaway from today's briefing. The active areas for precipitation, Pacific Northwest, the immediate southeast Carolina coastline. Elsewhere, it looks like fairly quiet week as far as precipitation goes. That's today's briefing. I have a lot planned this week. I want to talk about Climate Extremes Index. That's something I haven't talked about for quite some while. So look for that this week. Have a great week. Take care.